Hi, everyone, and welcome to ABA and MIA, where real talk meets real practice. I'm Carelix,
And I'm Miriam, and we are here to break down ABA, autism, and the everyday life of the 305.
with clarity, compassion, and a little Miami spice. So grab your cafecito and let's get into it. All right, guys. Well, today we're actually going to do something a little fun. We have gathered questions from our audience across all platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And we've gathered questions from parents primarily. And we're going to answer those for you today. I put them in a box. We're going to shake up the box and we're going to pick some questions out to answer for you guys live. You ready, Miriam?
Yes, I am. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's see which is the first question we received. It says, how do you transition from AAC to verbal speech? Okay, so that's a good one. So, an AAC device, I guess I'll start by explaining what it is. It stands for Augmentative Alternative Communication. And to provide a little bit of a background, commonly, some children on the spectrum are nonverbal or non-vocal, depending, right? Non-vocal meaning they can't elicit vocal speech, and non-verbal meaning they don't have any way of communicating, no matter what. It could be ASL or American Sign Language. It can be an AAC device. Again, I mentioned it stands for Augmentative Alternative Communication, and it usually looks like, especially nowadays in 2026, it looks like an app on an iPad. Proloquo to Go, for example, is a popular AAC app for our kids, and it basically has gridded vocabulary for the children to be able to piece together to form complete sentences and complete ideas, to request their wants and their needs. And so that's what an AAC device is. And so, again, I thought that would be helpful as a background. But the question is, how do you transition from an AAC or to verbal speech or to vocal speech?
Should I?
And
I can answer that one.
okay,
From my personal experience, I actually had a client like a year ago. She was on the AAC device, and all her programs were incorporated in the AAC device. So she would label using the AAC device. She would request using the AAC device, like what Carla has mentioned. And so from there, she had like a recent surgery with her tonsils out. And then after that, I started to notice that she's vocally imitating. So that's a great sign. So once you notice that a child is vocally imitating, so then you can slowly fade out from the AAC device and then actually start incorporating verbal programs into your treatment plan. And so, what I would like to first start out is first manding. Manding is very strong skill, and it's basically helps the child request what they want verbally. So once we get that down, then we can start slowly incorporating other programs into our verbal communication, labeling, and then answering, filling in statements, filling in conversations, and also, identifying functions, futures. So these are all programs you can slowly transition. And then, but you don't want to completely remove the AC device. You can probably expand on that skill to have them grow better and advance your communication. So, like, I sometimes, like to work on spelling because they know, like, they're familiar with the words and they're memorizing that. So then I would work on spelling, identifying letters, and then creating sentences. So there's more to the AC that you can expand on, but I wouldn't completely remove that from their skills. It's not. It's never like a bad thing to completely remove it as like a form of communication, but you can, expand on different skills of language that you can incorporate. Um, I don't know about you, Acrylics. Have you ever had that experience as well with the kid transitioning?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely worked with a lot of kiddos who transition to vocal speech, both after an AAC device and or PECS. PECS is a picture exchange communication system that's very widely used in the field of ABA as well. Instead of an actual device, it involves just picture symbols that are laminated individually, maybe just used on a tabletop, or some children grow to have very complex PEC communication systems or entire books, PEC books, that they use to communicate and form their sentences. So, for example, they'll have a symbol for I, a symbol for want, and then a symbol for whatever object they might want, like the ball or the bubbles or the crayons, or whatever it might be. Much in the same way that using an AAC device, they could just touch the symbol and the actual device will have a voice output. So, I mean, an AAC device ideally is a short-term goal. And then ultimately, the long-term goal is always going to be vocal speech, right? And so it's always really, really good to keep in mind, or really important for the supervising BCBA to keep in mind, that whenever those emerging vocal skills do start to surface, that that kind of fading out process begins, so that they don't become reliant or prompt dependent on that AAC, right?
And
Long term.
it's also important too, like I always advise everybody, make sure to verbally like with the AC device, make the sound more louder, because they need to hear the word with the actual picture they're selecting. Because if they're just selecting something and they're not really hearing it, then they're not really pairing the actual picture of what they're asking for, so it could, transfer to a verbal exchange of like communication. Same with PEC exchange. Like I see a lot of, RBTs and in the field, like they'll give them the picture, but then they won't actually say like, oh, ball. Oh, thank you for giving me the ball. I will give you the ball. They're just like, oh, thank you. Here you go. And they don't even hear the word, and they don't pair it with the actual stimuli. So that's very important to like actually pair the word when you are exchanging as well. So
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like, we have to communicate with our kiddos in total communication format, right? So even when you're teaching ASL too, you teach the sign and you've produced the vocalization of the item at the same time simultaneously, and you require that vocal component in return. And that's shaped, right? At first, you'll require any vocalization, and then you eventually shape it to a close approximation, and so on and so forth. So I hope that was clear. I think you want to move on to the second question?
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Let's see what the second question is. This one says, is regression normal? Is regression normal?
That's
What do
like
you
a
think?
lot of questions I get in the field a lot with parents. Like they'll see their child making so much progress, but then they see like, okay, well, what happened here? Why are they regressing? We've kind of mentioned it, like it could be, your kid's getting sick a lot. There's a lot of environmental variables involved in that, such as new school, parents are separating, home environment's different, a new therapist. They had this therapist for 2, 3 years. Now there's this new therapist. Like, I have no idea who this person is. I don't want to like pair with this person. It could also be something like new school, new, like there's new structure, or there's a new teacher there that doesn't know how to handle the behaviors. So there's all sorts of environmental variables that could play a part in regression.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it might be important to note too that, I mean, you were obviously discussing regression post the onset of ABA therapy, but what about regression before even ABA therapy gets started? So regression in neurotypical development, right? In a child who doesn't have an autism diagnosis or any kind of developmental delay, regression is not something you would typically see. So it's definitely something that's of concern that you should bring up to your pediatrician. You should definitely call Early Steps to have your child evaluated. If you're seeing regression, you know, in a 1-year-old or in a 2-year-old that doesn't yet have any kind of a formal diagnosis. So it definitely should be of concern. But like Miriam was mentioning, once you already have a child who has a diagnosis, who's getting therapy, yes, sometimes there will be regression, right? Learning is not linear. Learning, you know, there are upward trends, there are downward trends, there are plateaus. Depending on a lot of different factors, like Miriam mentioned. But overall, what you want to see is an overall trend in the right direction.
And I know,
Whether it's, yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. And I know like there's a medical factor, right? We kind of discussed, you brought up a huge point on like seizures, where
Mhm.
your clients had seizures and some parents don't even know their kid has seizures, from your past experience. And like you work on a program and then they can't maintain that skill. I had this issue with a client and we were like, what's going on? Like, we're working on this program, they're doing so great. And then, like, a month later, it's like, he's not retaining it. And then, same with some of his other programs, but he has the skill down, but then he didn't maintain it. So, we've noticed the eye poking, the staring. And so, mom got the kid evaluated and turned out he had seizures. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you, Miriam. So, the reality is that a lot of children with autism or individuals with autism also suffer from multiple comorbidities. OCD is a common one, ODD is a common one, ADHD is a common one. But seizure disorder is also a common one. And seizure disorder in our children often does not look like what most people picture a seizure disorder to look like. You know, they won't fall on the floor. There won't be any convulsions. Oftentimes they are like micro seizures or absent seizures. This is what neurologists, this is how they're described. And so, yeah, sometimes when a child just stares blankly into space for several seconds without responding, could be evidence of a micro seizure, or eye poking behavior, or but sometimes they do um, collapse, you know, but there haven't been convulsions in my experience. I've been working with kiddos on the spectrum for about 26 years now, and more than a handful of them have suffered from seizure disorder, and I have yet to see one convulsion. But seizures are one of those things that really are a mystery to
yeah.
the scientific community, because oftentimes your child can be um, under surveillance, under medical surveillance, even overnight, and they won't catch any. Um, and so it's one of those things that's really confusing, but it can definitely cause regression. Uh, the child is most times capable of relearning the old material that seems to have been lost, but that's just something for everyone to keep in mind, yeah, regarding regression. Anything else you think you want to add, Miriam?
No, I think you nailed everything. It's just hard to know that a client has seizures. So, like, it's
Mhm.
not that visible, like you mentioned. So, yeah, I would definitely go and get your child checked if they're having seizures, because that's a huge part in their learning and their communication. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Let's go for the third question. This one says, why does data show progress, but I don't see it at home?
Oh, that's a good one. Get that a lot from parents. um, I have parents saying, okay, so this is like an example I had like 2 weeks ago. We were potty training our client, and we've been potty training for like a year. So
Mhm.
he basically has every routine down. We're making him independent, pulling his pants down. He's sitting in the toilet. He's washing his hands, etc. Like he has all the routine based. So we wanted mom to see the consequence if he had like a wet underwear, what we would do. And so she came in and observed, and I was like, okay, so he's gonna do everything by himself. We're not helping him putting his clothes on. He's gonna take his underwear, he's gonna put it in his bag and then in his backpack because he needs to learn his lesson. If he has a dry underwear, we reward him with edibles. And so mom was like, oh, he can do all of this? Can't do this with me, you know? And so I was like, yeah, like we have a tendency, like as parents, to like help our child in need, like, oh, he's struggling. Let me just do it for him. And so I told mom, you got to back away. And I even tell the RBTs too, because the RBTs want to like get in there and like, oh, he needs help. He needs help. I'm like, let him do it. He can do it. We've been working on this skill. He knows how to do it. And he tries to grab you, like, come on, help me. But I'm like, nope, wait him out. And so it's funny how like parents are so, they give their kids so much prompts and assistance and they don't fade it out. And I think that's the main issue that I see that they don't see at home. So,
I do get that a lot from parents when they see what their child is capable of, then they say, "Oh my god, he's been playing me this whole time."
uh-huh.
And they get such a kick out of it, but then they learn their lesson, and then the child, because the parent rectifies their behavior and no longer jumps into rescue, then the child is like, "Okay, fine, my jig's up," right? Like, I have to do it with mom too. And so then the skill generalizes at that point. Um, but, I think I think it's important to note, as a response to this question, that a lot of our kiddos do have trouble with generalization. And generalization is basically when a child learns to perform a behavior or to emit a behavior with one person or in one setting, and then take that same behavior and be able to do it with another person in another setting. Um, I I have to say that when I used to work in a clinic, and I used to get that response a lot from parents, like, "My goodness, with you, he does so much, he knows his numbers, he looks at you when you call him, he just talks up a storm, and then when we get him home, he just doesn't do any of that with me or with his sister at home, and I don't I where's the social," and then it makes me think, like, as a clinician, like, where's the social validity in what I'm doing, right? Like, if he can't talk to his mom, I'm only with him 2 hours a day. I want him to be able to talk to his mom. I want him to be able to talk to his dad. And so I really think that that's the beauty in home and community-based services and school-based services, is that the child is taught the important behaviors they need to live a high quality life in their immediate environment with their primary caretakers, with brother, with sister, with teacher, with grandma. And so they get that firsthand feeling of what it's like for the child to be able to talk to them and to learn how to communicate with them, and I think that makes a world of a difference for families.
Yeah, 100%. Parent involvement is so important because, like you mentioned, if we're doing something at the clinic or in a different, even at home therapy sessions, it's one to one, and you hear them saying, "Oh my God, he always does better with you guys. Just I'm just gonna let you guys handle and do your thing. I
Yeah.
got to do some work, but you guys are doing great and excellent. At least like the first 2 hours, I can just enjoy myself." And I'm just like, that's great. That's awesome that you get to have that time. But at the same time, we want you to observe and we want you to like at least for 10, 15 minutes, just be like, hey, can we follow up? What'd you guys do? You know, and I know some parents escape from it because it's more reinforcing for them to be like, hey, they have my kid and they could do the one-to-one. I have free time. So I could do this. So that's another thing like I want to like really like motivate my parents to be like, hey, look, he did something great today. Do you want to see it? You
Yeah.
should see it. And then they should see, we can record it and then send it to them too. So they have the video so they can see what we're doing and they can implement the same strategies. Because I've noticed that a lot of our parents see what we do, but they still don't know like exactly how to implement those strategies. And it's kind of like the same thing with RBTs and the training. So it's key that like at least they observe, they have the video as reference, and then getting the follow-up training as well.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely I love to empower the caregivers of our children so that they don't shy away, right? Like sometimes parents are shy to work to play with their kids because they don't know exactly how to interact, especially when a child is very young or doesn't have those very early social skills. But it's really important for the parents to like dive in and help as much as possible because it'll make a huge difference with their level of functioning at home in the home environment. Awesome. I think that's good unless you think that you want to add something else.
Let's move on to the next.
All right, let's see what else we have going on over here. This one says, is AAC or PECS or ASL going to prevent speech?
Yeah, that's like a very conversation in social media I've seen a lot of parents talk about, and they're concerned about like, is my child going to be behind if they're doing ASL? And I try to say, from my personal experience, baby sign language is so important in the beginning, even for typical kids, any kids, from when they're like even 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, when they start, you can start introducing it. And it's basically they're using their cognitive brain, both sides of their brain. So, and they're using their hands and they're imitating at the same time, they're pairing something like the word for an exchange. So it's like they're doing more work,
Yeah.
which is like transferring, will help them transfer to making that verbal behavior of communication. So that's why I highly suggest doing ASL first. I know a lot of BCBs don't like that. They're like more like, no, I'm going to go to PECS. But it's so easy to exchange a picture, right? Like you just grab the picture. They're not even looking at the picture, but they know where the picture is, right? They memorize it, and then they just hand in and they get like the item. So I feel like ASL actually has more to it when they're learning, okay, this is ball. And then I say ball, like a ball, like they're pairing the word and the sign. And then eventually they're going to say the word. So I definitely feel like ASL is not going to put your child behind. There's some clients that are for ASL for like 4 or 5 years, and then we teach them the alphabet for ASL, and then we're trying to teach them. We kind of transfer it over to an AAC device eventually, because if we notice there's no verbal behavior at that point, at 6 or 7, then we do the AAC. But then you get a surprise that the client starts talking then, and like they have a few words, and then eventually more words. So then it comes to a transition of like, okay, do we do the AAC device, or do we start increasing more verbal exchange? So I never see that those type of communications would be making your child regress or not communicate verbally. So that's from my
Yeah.
personal experience.
No, it's definitely been my experience as well, and it's what the research shows. In no way, shape, or form is any type of alternative or augmentative communication going to inhibit vocal speech. Quite to the contrary, they will help to elicit vocal speech, especially sign language. Sign language is very special, and I thought it was perfect for you to mention the fact that oftentimes, unfortunately, the reality is that parents and clinicians alike often choose a communication format for the child based on their personal preference and not necessarily what might be best for them. I mean, there are definitely pros and cons to each, right? American Sign Language, for example, is not commonly known. And so the immediate family members and the teachers and whatnot, or the immediate clinicians, all need to learn. The good news is that it's very easy to learn, number one. And number two, it's very systematic, right? Because we're not teaching our child, any child 20 words at a time. We're going to teach them one word at a time, and then a second word, and then a third word, right? So it's very, very manageable, very sustainable. Everybody can kind of learn together to support what's best for the child. But I mean, as far as the research goes, there's no other form of alternative augmentative communication that matches the ability for American Sign Language to what's the word, to stimulate the language areas of the brain. So the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area that are located in the left temporal lobe of the brain are highly stimulated during ASL in a way that they are not. And this is, fMRI studies show this. I dedicated my master's thesis to this when I was getting my master's. I taught American Sign Language to a lot of nonverbal kiddos, and to my surprise, the eye contact came very easily. I didn't have to specifically train for eye contact. It just came along with. And I noticed same thing happened with imitation skills, motor imitation skills. So there's something called mirror neurons in the brain, and there's something special about ASL and the way that it stimulates mirror neurons. So we naturally learn by imitation in ways that our developmentally delayed kiddos don't as easily, but they do have the capacity, and ASL stimulates the brain such that it makes that type of learning easier because it incorporates the mirror neurons and it engages also the language centers of the brain. So then you have a child, when you teach them ASL, you're teaching them how to communicate, you're teaching them how to make eye contact, you're teaching them how to imitate all at once, both motor in their physical body, fine motor because they use their fingers to sign, gross motor because they use their arms to sign, right? And it's just such a beautiful way to teach so many skills kind of like all at the same time. It's a package treatment protocol in many ways. All right, so let's go ahead with the next question. Okay, and this is probably going to be our last one because we're running out of time here. This one says, how do I know ABA is actually working if progress feels slow? That's a good one. Progress feels slow.
I would say when a parent tells me that, because I know like we go through every 6 months reviewing the report, and they're like still on the same level in the VB map and in the ables or the violin, they're still kind of still there. And they're like, oh, how do I know if they're making progress? I would look more into the goals that we're running in therapy. So, for example, if they've mastered a goal, like they master 6 goals within the 6 months, that's great. I look at the small steps too, like the small goals. Like, for example, like transitioning. Is your child able to transition from preferred to a non-preferred task? Have you seen that? Oh, okay, that's without any behaviors. That's great. Is your child able to sit at the table for a certain amount of time? Attending behavior. These are small little goals that we start working on in ABA in the first couple of months, because we need those attending behaviors in order to work on other skills. So like eye contact, that's a huge one. Like responding to their name. Are they able to do that? Pointing. Let's just say they don't have any sorts of communication. Are they able to point to what they want when you're presenting a choice? Yes and no. That's at like later on, but like if they're able to vocally imitate, do you want this? Can they answer yes and no? Those are like small little steps. I would say that's great. Pointing, even like following one-step instructions. That's what we first do. Sit down, stand up, clap, stomp your feet. These are all skills that go into play for expanding language. Imitation, like you brought up, Krelix, is so important. Like not just vocal imitation, but like gross motor imitation, fine motor imitation, oral motor imitation, because the oral is important too, because when you're articulating a certain sound, you have to move your lips. You have like some of the O sounds or the oh, whoa, you have to round your lips. Are they able to imitate that first and then make the sound? So that plays a lot in speech as well. So those are basic steps I think that are important. And if you've seen that in progress, then that's what I will look out for. So
Yeah, it's always really important to focus on what your child has been able to achieve because the reality is that our kiddos are going to need hundreds and sometimes thousands of learning trials in order to master a skill. So I think it's really important for our parents to have a really realistic perspective of what's to come. I also think slow progress is so subjective. Like, what is slow to you, right? Because, and the reason I say that is I've worked with parents who have high functioning kiddos who meet 67% of their goals within the 6 month period. Um, Over 20 goals might have been mastered. And they still say, oh, but why is progress so slow? And you're like, wow, really? Because that to me is phenomenal progress, right? What to me is phenomenal progress feels slow to you because, again, I think the expectations might not be clear. And so I think it's important to sit down with the supervisor to kind of get a really nice perspective of what can be expected. Short-term objectives, how soon we can expect some of those, maybe just 2 weeks, and then long-term objectives, how long is it realistically going to take this child to do XYZ? It might take 1 year, it might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, right? Sometimes even high functioning kiddos need 3, 4, 5, 6 solid years of ABA before, they can fade out of services. And so, I think that's where I wanna end with that topic. What do you think, Miriam?
I think we had great conversations and there's more to come. So thank you guys for watching us. We are with you guys. Coffee in hand, heart in the right place. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yes, be sure to follow us across all our platforms, ABA and MIA, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. See you next time.
Bye.